This is Jim Fetzer with James Fetzer News with Judyth Vary Baker, continuing a series of interviews about her relationship with Lee Oswald and events in New Orleans. Judyth, you mentioned how after the Walker shooting, Lee was assigned to hand out some flyers promoting fair play for Cuba, and he felt he was being abused or put out in a situation where the Dallas police might be inclined to take potshots at him. Can you tell me, was he involved in the Walker shooting?
Well, he never told me that anything like that directly. What he was is certainly upset and angry that he was exposed like that they forced him to do that. He felt like he had to comply because it would prove his loyalty. He had, returned within that year to the United States from the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And he was concerned that they would make him stand out there. He could definitely get hurt. By the way, although he didn't tell me exactly that he made that note, there is an undated note that's supposed to be about the Walker shooting. They say it says what Marina is supposed to do in case he gets arrested or bad things happen. That they have friends in Dallas that will help and so on. And people have assumed that this has to do with the Walker shooting, but as a matter of fact, he told me that he warned Marina that he might have problems and get arrested. And I believe that this note could apply to that. It is unsigned. We know when Marina was upset, and we can't quite always depend on her testimony. This note was found, I think it was by Ruth Payne as usual, okay, in a cookbook or something like that. But in that note, Lee says how to find the jail and all that. Now, as he told me, he warned Marina that he might end up with a problem because he was in Dallas handing out flyers. Most people don't know he handed out flyers before he went to New Orleans. Anyway, he has to be transferred out. He
Judyth,
felt like.
Let me ask you a question about this Walker shooting. It always seemed very odd to me. I mean, this was a shooting done with a .30-06, a far superior weapon to a Mannlicher Carcano. It was fired at a stationary target, yet he missed. Now, you can't take a piece of junk weapon like this Italian Mannlicher Carcano, which was a completely unreliable weapon, to fire at a moving target and score 2 or more hits out of 3 shots. I mean, on its face, it's ridiculous. And that's not even getting to the point that JFK was killed by the impact of high-velocity bullets, and the Mannlicher Carcano, with a muzzle velocity of 2,000 feet per second, isn't even a high-velocity weapon, nor that co-workers observed him down around the lunchroom on the second floor at 10 minutes at 12, at 12, at 12:15, as late as 12:25, by Carolyn Arnold, who was the executive secretary to the vice president, and then he was confronted there within 90 seconds of the assassination at 12:30 by a motorcycle patrolman by the name of Marina Baker, who held him in his sights until Roy Truly, his supervisor, came over. And they both, in their written statement, said that he was calm, he wasn't perspiring, he wasn't agitated, he wasn't out of breath, except Truly added, maybe a little startled, as someone might be to suddenly find an officer holding a weapon on him. And Baker even added that he was drinking a Coke. I mean, the whole scenario for making Lee to be the patsy, when you consider that Marina also observed, and you knew, that he admired JFK, the man the Warren Commission fingered for this offense had neither the motive nor the means nor the opportunity to commit the crime.
Well, of course, they said there was all this talk that he did it in order to gain some kind of fame. Why would he say, I didn't do it, for heaven's sakes?
That's right, if you want fame.
Lee Oswald tried to save the president, and I am determined to get people to understand that. They've got to read the book, Me and Lee, so they can understand the real person. We've put a lot of dialogue into that book so that people can actually see how he thought and felt. And I'm telling you, if you had known the man that I knew, you would be outraged at what they've done to you. Of course, I've seen what's been done to me, on the internet and so on. And I can't even recognize myself sometimes. One person said that I hated my family name of Avery and changed it to Vary when I used the name Avery in Louisiana because I was afraid to use my real name, but I used it as a first name, and I always never changed my name to Vary. I mean, I was born Vary. So, all these weird, crazy things that people bring up and they don't know what they're talking about. Or how about one person saying that we had to work with 3,000 marmosets because I said we had worked with thousands of pounds of monkeys. And I said we worked with marmosets. And he cuts me off and he says, oh boy, 3,000 marmosets. I mean, nobody has that many. We worked with about 50 marmosets and then moved on to some big monkeys.
Let's just say, not everyone who's contributing to these threads is a rocket scientist, and very often their motive seems to be predetermined, that they want to discredit you, so they build on anything they can find anywhere, regardless of the veracity or the reliability of the source. If it's inconsistent with your position, they throw it up and take it for granted as though it were good as gold.
Well, Jim, you said it. I think you hit the nail on the head. That the more that you try to present evidence to someone whose mind is made up, the more they will resist. And then they will even become incoherent. And actually, they will not even use logic anymore. Because that's not what it's about. It's about holding onto your position no matter what.
This has been one of the most frustrating experiences of my life, Judyth. After spending 35 years teaching logic, critical thinking, and scientific reasoning, I thought I could bring them around. And the more I learned, the more challenges they threw up, and the more you and I refuted, it was astounding to me. It's as though that increased their confidence that they were right and that you were not authentic.
Well, they started out that way. I'm trying to understand why. There are some reasons. I was a late appearing witness. They say I was a damaged witness. Imagine, they've said crazy things about me, and so I've had to go, after I told my story, and I told it all in 1999, and like I was on the Manatee, I told my classmates, this is what happened. Then there wasn't enough room, and I had to take some of it out, so I could update it. And then I was accused of changing my story and sanitizing my story. It was wild because I was just posting to my friends at Manatee High School.
Judyth,
I had friends at Manatee tell me that, I just wanted to say, I had friends at Manatee High tell me, we had this guy calling us, and he said, do you know anything about that crazy, weird woman, Judyth Baker? Was she intelligent or was she just weird? And they hung up on him, but he finally got a few opinions, but...
Judyth, I know one of the darkest day of your life was when Lee was shot down by Jack Ruby. I take it they changed him into a dark sweater before they brought him out, that the whole thing was orchestrated. There was a sounding of a horn that seemed to initiate the sequence that would lead to his death. The dark shirt or sweater, I take it, was so you couldn't actually see the blood from where he had been wounded, so they could make up virtually any shot to his body. And then he was then hauled off for CPR, which is precisely the opposite of what should be done from somebody suffering from internal injuries.
Yes, and I'm medically trained, and when I saw that they were trying to do CPR, what you're doing there is increasing the chance of hemorrhage, and it assures that he's going to die, if anything. There's also a tremendous bruise around the place where he was shot, where you can see a lot of contusion, and it looks like somebody actually slammed their fist into where he was shot. That's torture. And the other thing that happened to him is when he's put into the ambulance, you can see that his fist, God bless him, his fist is tight. That means he was still conscious when they put him in. They said he was unconscious. No, he wasn't. He had a fist like that. That meant he was in pain. He was trying to hold on. We don't know what happened in the ambulance, but we do know one thing. He didn't get any oxygen. Can you imagine taking a mortally wounded man in the ambulance to the hospital, Parkland Hospital, and there's no charge for the oxygen, and they never used it. You can see it right on the receipt there.
Judyth, do you have any doubt that Lee was set up as the patsy because he knew too much? He was too sophisticated, too knowledgeable, including the events in New Orleans?
Oh, of course. I mean, he knew way too much. And I see him as one of the bravest people I've ever known. He knew he was going to die, Jim. He knew it. He held on. Now, I don't know what he was told to stay in that room or whatever, at that time. He knew he was afraid he wouldn't get out alive.
I knew the physician who treated him, Dr. Charles Crenshaw, Judyth, who received a phone call in the middle from the operator at the board saying, you're not going to believe this, but there's a call for you from the President of the United States. And when he answered, Lyndon asked him, he wanted a deathbed confession, and Crenshaw explained that he thought that the patient might survive. But when he returned, he'd taken a turn for the worse, and he explained to this rather sinister-looking guy in a trench coat that there would be no deathbed confession.
Can you imagine? They tried to get a confession out. We have the police saying they tried to get a confession out of him when he was in that room, and that, son, you've got to talk now. But I heard it different from Dave Ferry. He said, we're going to make you bleed to death unless you talk. And he shook his head no.
Judyth, I can't thank you enough. James Fetzer News. Thank you so much.